Right, and for more analysis, we're now joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohamed Osman, the international relations specialist. Good morning to you, Dr. Osman, and welcome to Qnews. Let me here start by asking you: Netanyahu's decision to resume this war on Gaza is a blatant escalation. What do you think the true goals are in this latest round of violation?
Thank you for having me, Mona. Unfortunately, what we have been expecting for the past few days, unfortunately, has now transpired. Israel has broken the ceasefire, basically unilaterally terminated it without any legal basis, and decided to resume this war of aggression against the people of Palestine with complete disregard to the international norms, international law, and the provisions of the agreement that was the ceasefire agreement that has been reached through the mediators, whether the Egyptians, the Qataris, and the Americans. And unfortunately, the Israelis have been enabled in this regard by by the United States, unfortunately, that which had not only not exercised any pressure on Israel in order for them not to engage in any further escalation, but they also supported their escalation efforts. I think that Netanyahu, after he did not comply with the provisions of the ceasefire agreement and tried to overturn the entire ceasefire agreement and the Dayton exchange in order to maximize Israel's gains, and at the same time not commit to a permanent cessation of hostilities as dictated by the three phases of the agreement. Since this did not work out and the United States did not succeed in helping him evade his obligations under the agreement, today he resumes this naked war of aggression, causing absolute wreaking havoc upon the Gaza Strip and causing the death of hundreds of Palestinians, mostly civilians.
Dr. Osman, if I may ask you, what do you have on the claims of Netanyahu for returning into violence? And many critics have already argued that Israel's military operations are being used for political leverage. Particularly, they believe that Netanyahu's actions were driven by domestic political concerns. What do you have on that?
This is partially true. I think Netanyahu's precarious political situation in Israel is one of the main drivers behind his decision to go back to war. However, I would not just downsize it to that or only say that this is the sole reason behind the resumption of the war. Because at the end of the day, this was not the decision of one man. This is the decision of the Israeli government and the Israeli top political leaders and the top military leaders. They have agreed to resume this war because Israel does not believe that it has succeeded in scoring a victory or achieving results that they can market as a victory in the last round of fighting. And now, since they have secured the release of most of the detainees through the last detainee exchange agreement, there is substantially much less pressure on Netanyahu and his government now. And they want to achieve something that would ensure that they can maintain permanent security control over the Gaza Strip. And this cannot happen without dealing Hamas a decisive defeat on the battlefield. And this is something that he did not achieve in the past round of fighting. It's questionable whether he will achieve that at the moment. However, the only ones who bear the price are the innocent Palestinian civilians who are dying in the hundreds. 350 people died in less than 5 hours. This tells us how severe and bloody and violent this phase or this round of the fighting will be this time. However, I do believe also that his internal political problems, including his corruption charges or corruption trial, might be some of the motivations that have caused Netanyahu to reignite this war. And of course, to ensure his political survival and ensure that Smotrich and the religious Zionism party does not withdraw from the government, causing its collapse. Now, even Ben Gvir will rejoin the government once again due to the resumption of the genocidal war on Gaza.
Let me here ask you about. You said respectively that the United States has supported Israel's military actions, and the Israelis have reported already that they have told the United States prior to their strikes about their recent strikes. But the Israeli recent strikes are seen as defying the ceasefire agreement. How do you see, or how do you view the U.S. stance, particularly that they are at the same time the one responsible for mediation?
I think it would be rather naive to assume that Israel has a different position than that of the United States. Unfortunately, or the United States has a position on that different than that of Israel. Unfortunately, many analysts all around the world and in the Arab world have indulged in absolute nonsense about the United States applying substantial pressure on Israel, about the United States having its own motives. Donald Trump and his administration are driving this region to war. They are bombarding Yemen, eviscerating it, and now they are deploying 3 aircraft carrier groups into the Middle East, meaning that probably the Trump administration is planning to take military action against Iran potentially. So I do not see how they would have any different positions regarding Gaza and the situation of Hamas other than that of Israel. Today, the White House has made it explicitly clear that they fully support Israel's move to resume the war. Many American media sources say that Trump has personally greenlit the resumption of the war of aggression against Gaza. And also, it seems that the United States, according to some Israeli media sources, is not willing to even apply any pressure on Israel this time to force them to allow humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. So you can imagine how horrendous the course of action the United States has taken in this regard. The United States now we can consider is a participant in this war of annihilation against the Palestinian people. The United States has proposed the displacement and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people as a solution to the Palestinian cause. So if this is the country that is mediating this conflict, then I know that the chances of peace are in dire straits and that peace will never materialize. Unfortunately, what we are seeing right now is a coordinated effort by both Israel and the United States to create a new Middle East where the supremacy of Israel and the overall comprehensive superiority of the state of Israel is retained vis-a-vis all the other regional actors. And unfortunately, this is the situation now that we have to deal with. And unfortunately as well, the people of Palestine will be the first victims of these sinister actions.
Israel's strikes have already killed over 300 people and injured more than 1,000 others. Now, how do you assess the legality of these actions under international law, particularly in relation to the ongoing ceasefire agreement and negotiations, definitely for the second phase that has collapsed already here at the end of the first one?
Well, the ceasefire agreement does not exist anymore, so it's not binding to anyone. It's over. The war has begun, so it has no legal standing now whatsoever, and it has no effect. It's worthless, unfortunately. However, that does not mean that Israel is not violating international law by the way it's conducting itself during this phase of the military operation, just like the previous one. Israel is committing horrendous war crimes, which come in complete violation of a plethora of international human rights treaties and international humanitarian law as well. Primarily the Geneva Conventions, of course, which are the laws of war, basically, and also international human rights laws, as I previously said. So now they are blatantly committing war crimes today. They have resorted to the so-called fire belts, which is a form of partial carpet bombing of entire residential areas, causing the death of entire families. 350 people, mostly civilians, have died in these attacks. It is reported that they have managed to assassinate 6 leading members or mid-ranking members of Hamas. However, they killed 6 Hamas leaders, and with them, they killed over 350 civilians. So you can imagine the proportionality that is being assigned in this regard, which is not acceptable by any means. In addition to that, Israel has deprived the Gaza Strip for the past 17 days of all humanitarian aid, which means that a humanitarian crisis at the moment is brewing inside the Gaza Strip, and this now will be compounded by the resumption of the war and the absence of any U.S. pressure to force Israel to let humanitarian aid in. Unfortunately, the escalation we are witnessing right now in Gaza is almost unprecedented, and it seems if things continue the way they are, the war in Gaza, this round of war, will be much more brutal and bloody than the last one, which ended about 57 days ago.
The Israeli media has, or citing security officials, Israeli officials definitely has reported that the attacks on Gaza aim to pressuring Hamas in freeing the remaining detainees. However, families of the detainees, the Israeli detainees, have already condemned the resumption of war and demanded the return of the ceasefire and peace efforts. Now, how do you think the Israeli public perceive the Israeli decision to resume the war, and what do you think their reaction would be?
The Israeli public is fairly polarized at the moment. On the one hand, you have the families of the detainees and the Israeli left in general. They are opposed to how Netanyahu is handling this conflict, is handling the detainee exchange. They do not agree with the resumption of the war today. The families of the detainees have released a statement condemning Netanyahu's resumption of hostilities in Gaza because it endangers the lives of the 24 remaining living detainees inside the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, another segment of the Israeli public opinion, the supporters of the far right and the ultra-conservative segments of Israeli society, which are numerous, by the way, they are a very significant proportion, and they are the power base of Netanyahu and his governing coalition. They completely support Netanyahu's resumption of the war. So now Israel is polarized and divided. However, I do not believe the polls in the Israeli media or some leftist Israeli media outlets. I believe that the majority of the Israeli populace, unfortunately, supports the resumption of the war. Had they not been supportive of the resumption of the war, I don't think it would have happened, because Israel is a country where public opinion matters in a way or the other. So at the end of the day, Netanyahu knows that he has support among some segments in the population, and that's why he took the decision to resume his genocidal rampage in the Gaza Strip. However, I do not believe that this is sustainable. If the war goes on and more detainees die, as many have already died due to Israeli fire, maybe then public opinion will turn more against the Israeli government. And also something you mentioned in that question, Mona, you said that the goal is the announced goal, or the Israelis have openly announced for the resumption of the war is the release of the detainees. This is one scenario. They might be trying to pressure Hamas to accepting all the concessions that were asked of it by Steve Witkoff, the President Trump's envoy to the Middle East. However, there is also another scenario that might be the case, which is that Israel plans to exercise or impose direct control over the Gaza Strip and occupy parts of it permanently and forcefully remove Hamas from power. This is another scenario. A third scenario, and this is the worst of them all, is that Israel might be attempting to implement the plan of ethnically cleansing and forcefully displacing the population of the Gaza Strip through this manifestation of absolute genocidal brutality. In either cases, it will lead to very dire consequences for all the relevant actors, including Israel.
Right. That was Dr. Mohamed Osman, the International Relations Specialist. We thank you so much for your valuable insights.